So today's episode guest is coming to us from Japan, all the way in Japan.
That's crazy because currently right now we are sitting in the Olympic National Park visitor parking lot. And so there's this whole Pacific Ocean between us and our guest. But with amazing technology, we're able to have her here inside our truck with us. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited. This is someone that we have not met in person, but we've followed and talked to for the last couple of years and are consistently impressed by her content. Specifically, it's just crazy helpful. Her name is Bethany Taylor. That's her handle on Instagram, but she does a lot of outdoor adventures. She does a lot of trail running and hiking, specifically with like solo females, encouraging women to get outdoors. But also, she does a lot of content on emergency preparedness. We've wanted to have her on for a long time. And then with everything that happened with Maui and with it being, wildfire season, and wildfires are going crazy in Canada and the US right now, and there's a hurricane coming. It's just hurricane season. And it never hurts to have a little bit of emergency preparedness. And she does such a great job of sharing practical tips online. And so we're having her on to talk about getting outdoors, being safe, developing that confidence, and then also just being prepared for whatever life throws at you.
This is going to be a great episode full of really practical tips and fun stories. So without further ado, let's just get into our conversation with Bethany. Bethany, thanks so much for being in our truck. I mean, technically you're in Japan right now, but right, you are our first guest here in our truck, and I'm so happy that you're here because we have a lot of questions for you. We want to just dive right in, but thanks for being here.
I am honored that I'm the first person. So we were talking about this before we recorded. Is like I'm in Japan and you guys are in your rig on the. Can I say where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna be gone by the time this airs.
Okay,
Yeah.
you guys are in Olympic, so I don't know. People get weird about that. So it's just cool how technology allows us to connect. When I'm like living in the future, it's Saturday here. I'm 14 hours ahead of you, and you guys are just like sitting in your little mobile home, and we're gonna hang out and talk about some fun topics, some serious topics, and kind of everything in between.
Yes, wow. I'm so excited. Okay, let's just start with who you are. Where are you? What do you do? Just give us the lowdown on like who you are.
I've done a lot of podcast interviews, and I'm really bad about explaining like who I am. Like I know who I am, but I'll do my best. So I'm Bethany Taylor. I'm the founder of Iron Soul Trailblazers, and my goal is to help more women get outside confidently, fiercely, whether that's through meetups or trips or resources or content through Instagram. So that's kind of like my primary, and I host all women adventure trips. That's how we got connected, and I just try and open up a space to just kind of lower that barrier to help more women get outdoors confidently and do all the things that they want to do. Dream big, play big, make sure they're fueling themselves properly. And then also I kind of have this new side of things of which we'll get into, of that just being prepared for emergencies, being prepared for natural disasters, being prepared for everyday life, because we never know what's going to happen, whether that's the safety side of things or having a go bag ready, which again, we'll get into. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell, I guess you could say. And I'm currently in Japan, if you didn't pick up on that from the cues we were giving. But we got over here, my husband's in the military, so we got orders over here about a year ago, and we love it. We weren't supposed to be here. This was a hot fill order is what it's called. So he was pretty much like next on the list to choose where we're going to go next. And this set of orders came up, and they're like, "Hey, you're going to Japan." We're like, "Excuse me?" Where? It wasn't on our list. We didn't choose this. So the initial like gut drop of, we have to move overseas, like we have a dog, all of that. And then we kind of like just kept going through life like, okay, well, this is the destiny of where we're going. And this is awesome. We get to we have the privilege of living overseas in a different country, in Japan, for 3 years. Hell yeah. Like, let's take advantage of it. So it's normal. We gave ourselves that permission to be like, this is hard. This is different. Like, where do we start? Like, how do you move overseas? I don't know. I've I mean, I've traveled overseas before, but nothing like moving your entire life. So it was a learning process for both of us because we were just like, we didn't have the resources until we started reaching out. I started doing my own research and like asking people. And then we moved and we got over here and we're stoked to be here. It's beautiful. We're big into hiking, backpacking, mountain biking, fly fishing, all of that. Like, and they have that here, which is really cool. And I obviously work remote, which is awesome. So I can still do my job while I'm over here. And then obviously traveling is a little bit more cumbersome. Traveling from Japan to like Peru. I went there in April and then I'm flying back to the States for all of my trips. So I'm a professional long distance flyer at this point, which I never thought I would say, because a 14-hour flight, 14-hour flights, I'm like, cool, whatever, like, let's roll, like, let's go. I have to take them to get away from Japan. So yeah, that's kind of what I got going on.
That's okay. There's so many things I want to touch on there. But first off, one of the first things we connected on is that you moved to Japan from Tennessee. Is that correct?
Yes. So I grew up in Virginia Beach, lived there pretty much. Fun fact, I was born in Japan, which is ironic.
No way.
Yeah, on the same hospital that I go to now. I know. My dad was...
Oh my gosh.
Trippy, huh? My dad was a federal agent for 25 years. So we lived over here. They popped me out when I was over here. And then 31 years later, we back, which is, again, life happens how it's supposed to. And like, I think we were supposed to come here. So grew up in Virginia Beach, pretty much my whole life, college, high school, all my jobs. And then I met my husband, Bryce, in obviously military. We're going to move. So we moved to Tennessee in 2020, which was awesome because we spent a lot of time in Arkansas, which we really got into like fly fishing, mountain biking, like the Ozarks, Bentonville, all these just awesome places in Arkansas. I don't want Arkansas to blow up, but it is one of the most underrated states you will ever visit. Just fun fact for everybody. Arkansas is awesome. So we lived there. We were supposed to be there for 3 years, and they're like, you're going to Japan. So we only lived there for a year and a half. So we moved again to Japan. So it was Virginia, Tennessee, Japan. So that's how I got here. So a lot of people don't necessarily know like the ins and outs of that, but that's how we got to where we are. So we were in Tennessee for a very short amount of time. We love Chattanooga. We try and just, our weekends are spent like, where can we get dirt underneath our feet? How can we get outside? How can we get on our bikes? How can we go? We had a camper. We had a 21-foot toy hauler when we were stateside, so we'd rip around with that, bring the dogs, leave them in the air conditioning. We go play, come back, cook food. Like, I mean, you guys know that's like the coolest like life ever.
It's so much fun. We love it. Yeah. Tennessee definitely has some dirt. Yeah. I knew we had connected over Tennessee. That was like, because we met in a Trova trip. You were leading your tours with girls. The same time we were leading our Iceland trip, and we like were introduced, and we were like, oh, Tennessee, cool. That's like before Japan. So
I think I was like, I want to be friends with them. Follow. And then we just like connected. I was like, these people seem really cool.
And we have loved your content because I mean it's like a whole other side of things. Like I mean, especially the stuff that you've been leaning into lately with like the emergency preparedness. Like that's just been like that super practical tip, and we can lean into that. I don't know if we want to start by going that direction, or if we want to talk more about like the getting outside first. Maybe let's start there. Like
getting outside.
How did you start getting outside? Have you always been outdoorsy? I mean, what made you interested in helping other women get outdoorsy, and did you see a need for that, I guess?
So that's a great question. I didn't necessarily grow out in the typical outdoorsy realm, I guess you could say. You look at my like Instagram now and you look at my life, you're like, oh, she's been playing outside since she like popped out of the womb type thing. That is the farthest thing from the truth. I grew up playing like sports. I played soccer from 4 to like age like 25. So every weekend with my brother, sister, my parents, we were at soccer tournaments. So we were always like outside. I was always been like active. And we, again, grew up in Virginia Beach. So like we would pull our pop-up camper and we'd like go down to Hatteras and like camp on the beach type thing. But it was never like we're going to national parks or we're going out like camping in tents, which is fine. That was just like how I grew up. And then I met my
Right.
husband, Bryce, and we've been together 7 years. So 2016, I met him. And he worked at an adventure center in college. So he's always kind of been outdoorsy. He's been mountain biking for 20 years. That's how I got
Wow.
voluntold into learning to mountain bike because of my husband. He's like, you want to be a tailor? You got to learn to mountain bike. I was like, cool. So I did it, and it was great, and I love it. He's like, you're an athlete. You'll be
Yeah.
fine. He always
Yeah.
jokes, you have one rule, and it's fall uphill. That was like our ongoing jokes. Like, if you're going to fall, just fall uphill, which you can't always do because you don't want to fall downhill. But it's like our
Right.
ongoing
Yeah,
joke
yeah.
is like, if you got to
It's a
eat
good
shit,
joke.
like eat shit uphill.
It's a little slower. A little
Yeah,
easier.
a little slower. So yeah, when I started meeting him, like he would be like tubing down the James River and like kind of go camping. So he like introduced me to some things, but it was never like full blown like outdoorsy until 2022 hit, and I fell into this trail running world. I was never like a runner. I like ran around the soccer field, but I was never like, oh, let me go run a mile type thing. I was like, yeah, this is not for me. And then I found trail running in 2022 through my very good friend Alyssa now, and that was it. That was the first domino. I got into
Wow.
trail running. I ran my first half, and then I ran 3 ultras after that. And that kind
Wow.
of opened me up into like hiking, doing like 14ers and doing backpacking, and really that, like I said, that was like the first domino of falling into there's a whole world out here I don't know about. And I have a love-hate relationship with social media. I could talk about that
For sure.
forever, but it allowed me to
Yes.
see this whole world that was out there. I didn't know about trail running or ultra running or about packs or anything of that nature. And then I found this Instagram, and then the algorithm crushed it because it's like, oh, here's all these cool things you need to know about the outdoors. I was like, great. And there still was, I feel like, this standard set of like, yes, cool, I've run ultras, but like I'm just a regular person. I like pay taxes. I like go to bed. I hang out with my dog. I'm just this normal person. And I think there was this standard set for like you have to be a specific tier of like fitness level to go hiking, or you have to have this certain pack or whatever. And that lowered the or higher the barrier for a lot of people because like, oh, I can't spend $400 on a new pack. Yeah, maybe down the road you will, but to start, just throw like a JanSport backpack on, and like there's some snacks in there and some water, and like get out there. So my goal with content was like that outdoorsy focused content was to like it was the thing I wish I had more of. I got opened up to this social media world, but it still felt really like hard to obtain. And so I was like, I want to create content that makes it easier. It's more digestible. Like, hey, here are the things you should probably put in your day pack. And great, just so the regular average person can go out and like hike and like be safe. And it's evolved. Obviously, you've probably seen like my content has evolved to more like safety aspect and like gear and stuff like that. So I don't really know if that answered any of your questions, but it just felt good.
It
So
No,
does.
yeah.
yeah, no,
No, for
it,
sure.
yeah.
It did.
You are such an infectious person. Like I feel like you post online. I mean, like even talking to you right now, you're
Hmm.
like I'm like, okay, I hate trail running. I hate all, but I'll do it with you. Like this is
Right?
awesome. So
Yes.
let's just go. And so do
Yeah.
you find that like do you find that you are like you're inviting women and other people in like experiencing this new world? Like
Hmm.
what is is it how difficult is it for you to connect to other people to get them to be excited about the
Can
outdoors?
can I add one thing here?
Sure.
We're having this conversation like what, a week after you just led a trip to Banff and
Oh yeah.
Alaska, so you just
Yeah.
like connected with like tons of women. So I
Yeah.
want to add that in there.
Yeah. So it's tough on I'll get to those trips. So it's tough on social media because I do put out all this content, and I feel like it's super digestible and relatable, and you don't know a ton of feedback because no one's like saying, not everyone's like, oh, this was so great, you helped me do this. You get like likes
Mhm.
and views and everything. I'm like, cool. And I'm going to continue to put this content out because I'll get those one-off messages that were like, hey, thanks to you, I was able to get on trail with my kid. I bought them a pack, and like we went out and did a 2 mile hike, or I signed up for my first 5K. I'm like, hell yeah. Like, I love it. I want people to send me those messages. I'm going to keep giving and giving this content, but it does feel good when someone's like, hey, because of your content, I did this. And it starts with a lot of like little pebbles of like, I'm just like dropping all these like little pebbles on the road, and like other people will start coming like, oh, I signed up for a race, or I'm a big hybrid athlete, so I lift and I run. Alyssa Olenek, like I said, my dear friend, kind of helped me get into that realm. I've always been a lifter, but then I added in trail running. I was like, hey, how can we combine these two forces? If you are lifting in your regular day-to-day, you're going to be a stronger trail runner. You're going to be able to climb up hills faster. You feel more confident descending. So yeah, I'm putting out content, and I'm hoping that it is being absorbed by people, and that they are taking it and going out and doing something maybe scary for the first time or new for the first time. And that's also why I created the trips, through working through Trova Trip, because most of the time it does, like going on a trip to Banff for 7 days, people wouldn't even know where to start planning. And that's okay. You're not like, you don't have to know how to do that. So by hosting the trips, it helps lower that barrier. So they can show up with some of their gear. Everyone gets packing lists. Everyone gets training programs that I write them so that they feel really strong starting, like on the hikes that we're doing. And then they show up and they just get to experience and learn along the way. And my goal with the trips is that when the trips are done, they have 15 to 20 new friends, and we're friends. We got to meet in real life. And then also they're stoked to keep adventuring. And I hope that's a springboard for some of these women. So they're like, oh, wow, I can camp. I am capable to do that. I know how to set up a tent. I know how to go to the bathroom in the woods. I know how to pack my pack. I know how much water I need to bring with me. So I'm hoping that they learn all of these things with the support and comfort of me, the guides that we're with, and all the other women, so that they can go on and keep doing all these things with their life and living these just big stoke-filled lives, because this one trip helped them see that they're able to do that they may not have otherwise if they didn't have the support or encouragement in this little tight-knit community that we have on the trips. So it's a privilege to be able to host these trips. Like, selfishly, I get to go to these really rad places that I've never been. Like, I've never been to Alaska or Banff or Jasper, and I just went to these two places. I get to meet all of these new friends, and now they get to go off and like hold these memories with them close and like fill their soul. And then hopefully they like go plan a meetup with one of the friends that they met on the trip, or they go start solo adventuring, which I'm a huge advocate for. So yeah, it's super cool, as you guys know.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think we both kind of had similar backgrounds as you growing up, where we spent some time outdoors. My family had a pop-up camper too, and then I grew up on a farm, so I was like always outside, but I never really grew up doing like hikes. And we may have hiked a few times, but we weren't like big hikers, and we weren't hugely outdoorsy. And so I think there's always been that, like, I don't want to say imposter syndrome, because I don't know if that's the right term, but you definitely feel a little bit like fish out of water. Like, am I doing this right? How much do I really need? Like, you go into REI and it's incredibly daunting. Like, everybody's like, gearheads kind of thing. But I've loved your content because, like, I'm one of those people who I get a little bored hiking. I do. It's a little slow. But like trail running, I'm like, oh, I'm not a trail runner. I'm not that fast. But then I see, like, you're obviously faster than me. But like, I see you and I'm like, she makes it like the point of entry. Like, you can just start. Like, you just started somewhere. And I'm like, okay, maybe one day I'll be a trail runner too. So I love seeing your content doing that. Do you see women coming off your trip feeling more empowered to take on like solo trips of their own? Do you get to follow them along? Like, is that something you've seen?
Yeah, so a lot of them will meet up with people who went on the trip. So they'll plan like another national park trip somewhere, which is really cool because we're in the Telegram group, so everyone's like can connect, and you have phone numbers and Instagrams after that. And I have had some gals who are like, yeah, I went on my first solo backpacking trip, overnight trip, or I rented a camper and I pulled a camper for the first time. I'm like, hell yeah, like that's awesome. So I have seen that, and kind of circling back about like what you're just saying about that imposter syndrome. So like, just so you guys know, everybody on the internet, like one of my first hikes, like I wore boots, like military hiking boots that didn't fit me. I wore cotton socks, a cotton sweatshirt, Victoria's Secret yoga pants, brought like one snack and like a water bottle, like just the epitome of like not good.
You crushed
I survived.
it.
Yeah, I crushed it. Yeah,
you can only go up from there.
Exactly. You literally have to start somewhere. And I think with a lot of the resources nowadays, you're probably going to be starting off a little higher than that just because there is so much resources out there. But it's not going to be perfect. Your gear's going to evolve over time. You don't go out and buy all this expensive gear until you're like, oh, I love this. This is something I want to do. And like with trail running too, you see all these badass trail runners on Instagram, like running the Tahoe 200, and that's cool. But like, we're over here like just walking, power hiking up hills and like stopping and eating snacks, and like that's what's I love trail. Like I road run too because I can't always get on the trail. I love trail running because you don't really think about time. You just get out there like, cool, I'm gonna go run 3 miles. Your pace is probably gonna be like a 15 to 20-minute mile. If there's hills, if you're new to trail running, like you're going to fall, you're probably going to cry at some point on the trail. It's going to be harder than road running, but you're allowed to walk. You're allowed to power hike up hills. You're allowed to stop. Like I love taking pictures of mushrooms and wildflowers. I love eating gummy bears in beautiful places. And like, I think trail running is just so fun because it's less serious than road running. Like if you compare trail running races to road races, they are vastly different. In trail running, people are just like stoked to be there, and like you're just out there getting dirty and like again eating snacks. Like some aid stations have like fireball shots if people are into that, and there's like applesauce. Yeah, trail running races are so awesome, and the camaraderie is so fun. So yeah, too long
that's
didn't
so
read.
Cool.
Just start. It doesn't have to be long.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be fast. You don't have. There's no requirement to be fast trail running. That is written.
Yeah.
There's no commandment that says you have to be fast. Just get out there, put some comfy shoes on. Make sure you let somebody know where you're going if you're going by yourself. Make sure you have plenty of snacks and water. Make sure you know the trail, have a map downloaded, you have an idea, and then just go out, rip around, and like be really proud of yourself, and then keep going from there.
I love that. I'm like, yes, I got this. I'm going to go run today.
I know. We're going to hop off this call right now.
Yeah, go running.
So you are kind of leading into a huge topic that we want to talk with you about, which is being prepared, safety. So specifically, like I saw you start sharing like safety in everyday life, like, you know, try to park backwards and like reverse into parking spaces and like these basic tips of like, make sure you always tell somebody where you're going, like make sure you make eye contact, like these little tips I've seen. I'm like, oh, that's really smart. Like, and I've tried to incorporate into my own life. And then I've also seen you kind of carry that on and do emergency preparedness. And we especially want to talk about that in light of, you know, the Maui fires that happened about a week and a half ago now. And now there's fires all over Canada. It's just wildfire season all over the US and Canada. And there's hurricanes coming. I mean, it's just a crazy time of year. And personally, I've been through 2 tornadoes now. And in both moments, I'm like, I don't know what to grab. Like I've never been prepared. So let's start with basic safety and then maybe lead into like the larger emergency preparedness. I'm just gonna let you take that and run and do what you will with it. But give us like, and it's a loaded question.
Where should I start? I'll figure it out. I'm going to talk and see what happens. So,
just run with it.
Yeah. So my safety. I grew up, let's talk about safety in like everyday life. So I'm very fortunate. I grew up with a law enforcement family. So it's always kind of been a thing for us is just safety in everyday life, being situationally aware of what is going on around us. Obviously, husband's military, grew up in a military town, huge military presence. So it's always kind of been there for me. And not an overly like anxious person, like when we were in situations, but it's just like, hey, where are the exits? Who's in the restaurant with us? Just walking, you're like, okay, just do a quick scan, like just so you have an idea of what's going on. You can maybe sense if something doesn't feel right or somebody looks kind of weird. And just making sure that like your head's kind of on a swivel. And again, I don't say this to scare people or to instill fear, but there are some things that can be prevented if our heads are up and our eyes are up. We're not looking at our phones. We're not walking, texting. I love like the little thing you said. I love backing into parking spots because it allows me to sit do a scan of the parking lot that I'm in, and I can get out the door and be facing where I'm going. Because if I open the door and I pulled into a parking spot, my back is to everything and I can't see everything. And I do almost everything alone. Just because my husband is gone a lot and I'm kind of like the solo sheep. I just kind of like do my own thing. So I spend a lot of time alone. So I'm always just like making sure like I have my own back. So yeah, just like little stuff like that. And just paying attention. It's a very like just a simple thing of like when we're on walks, pay attention to like how are people outside, like who lives where, so that if something happens and you're like, man, this person hasn't been outside they're usually outside at this time every single day, or man, their car's gone, or you know what, the newspapers are stacking up in their driveway. Like just little things like that can actually help that person. Maybe just not our own safety, but the safety of someone else. So just being vigilant. Again, I learned this from just growing up. So a lot of people, there's no fault to them, don't necessarily think about this type of thing. They just kind of go through their life and like are just cruising through life, and aren't really paying attention to like who's parked next to me, or if I'm at a campground, like who is around me, or just noticing like weird people maybe just like watching you or whatever it may be, whether you're with a family member or with your spouse or whatever. So just being aware of your surroundings can really go a long way. So yeah, I kind of talk about like everyday safety things. And then because I think it's important, and I think it's not like, I don't really know any Instagram pages or I know some that like talk about this, but I think it's such an under talked about subject of like our everyday safety. And then, yeah, so I started kind of posting about that. And then it really started moving over to, I've always kind of been prepared for like natural disasters, but I never talked about it. I just didn't know how. Like I didn't think people would grab onto it because you're like, oh, you're talking about like making a go bag. Like people go to like the big preppers world of like people being prepared for the end of the world. Like we're not preppers. Right. People may think we are just because like you look at our gear closet, you're like, oh, y'all are like, I want to come to your house
ready.
and make it weird. Yeah. But it's more of like I would rather be. So hope is never a course of action. So we always hope that nothing would happen, but hope doesn't allow us to be prepared for potentially one of the worst days of our lives, whether it's a fire, a typhoon. We live in Japan. Hello, typhoon season, tsunamis. So I think when we moved here, it really clicked to me that I'm home by myself with my dog in a foreign country, and we're in a tsunami season, a typhoon season. Like, how can I make sure I'm prepared with my dog, all of my important documents and everything if we need to go? Like, if we got to get out of here, whether it's on foot or whether I need to drive my car to base or to an evac point. So I think for me, it really clicked. I was like, I need to start sharing this with people because there are so many people that probably don't have fire extinguishers in their houses, who don't have flashlights, who don't have even like extra water, just little small stuff that you probably already have in your house. Like you probably have a flashlight. Are there batteries in it? Do your smoke detectors work in your house? Do you have just a little bit of extra water and some non-perishable food available? The biggest one for me is, where are all of your important documents? This one, it kind of like blew my mind because I had a lot of people message me. They're like, dude, I don't know where my passport is. I don't know where my birth certificate is. One of my biggest things, like if you could do anything from this podcast, whoever's listening today, go in your house and gather all of your important documents, social security cards, passports, medical documents, all of your dog's records as well. Anything you have, like we're military, so we have specific paperwork we need in order to live over here, like legally. So have all of that. Any vaccination records that you have, put all of that together. Because if you need to leave your house in 5 minutes and you got to go, the last thing you're going to be thinking about is like, oh, I need to grab my passport. What if you live overseas and you have to fly somewhere else? What if you, like, getting back a social security card, all of your important documents, medical information, just birth certificates is a lot. And so if you can have
Mm.
that somewhere that you can just grab and go, mine's in my go bag. So I just grab your friends.
Sorry. People are always like waving at our truck. Sorry.
That's
We're
awesome.
like,
You're like,
hey.
Yeah.
Sorry,
hilarious.
keep going.
You're like,
That was such a serious. I didn't want to get distracted, but he was not going
you're
away.
totally fine. You're like, oh, he's still there.
Keep going.
So, yeah, important documents. That's one that I think if you wanted to start somewhere, start there. Getting all of that together, putting it in a waterproof like folder binder. So if there is a fire in your home and you can grab that really fast, or if you need to evacuate within 5 to 10 minutes, because wildfires happen fast, and there are things
Mm-hmm.
that you think aren't going to happen until they do. So that is just one thing, is like getting all your important documents together. And yeah, like my goal was to like, with like sharing all these things, is like, what are these basic things we can have in our home, so that if that day, like, we want to put ourselves in the best position possible in case things get weird, and not to be that's my dog, not to be like fear led, but it's more, how can we be prepared, especially with people with families and kids. When something happens, you get that emergency notification on your phone, like you have 10 minutes to evacuate your home. Like, what do I do? You're worried about your children.
Yeah.
Do they have clothes? If like the purpose of a go bag that I keep talking about is essentially a 3-day supply of your basic necessities that allow you to stay alive and be okay and safe if you need to evacuate your house, whether that's on foot, on going through your vehicle, going to a different city or town, going to an emergency shelter, because you don't know what the next 3 days are going to look like for you. You may be flying out of the country, flying out of the state, going to somebody else's house, going to a Red Cross shelter. You don't know. So that bag allows you to have important documents, lighting, warmth, food, water. What else? Cash. That's another big one we don't think about. No power. How are you going to pay for gas? Food. How can we have cash on hand? Which I know is like an ancient art nowadays of like having cash. Yeah. Sanitation kits. Make sure you're staying sanitized too, because if you don't have running water, how are you going to wash your hands, use the restroom, that type of thing. So I just made a post on how to build a go bag, which I'm sure you guys will link in the show notes. But yeah, so I'm just trying to bring light to a topic that a lot of people don't think about until something like that happens in Maui. We're like, they're on an island surrounded by water. They're the last people that would have ever thought that they would be just in complete devastation. And it makes me so sad. It makes me so sad. There's just people's lives are completely changed, and that's the worst day of their life. And how many of them were able to get out their important documents or to get out safely? Obviously your body and your animals and your children, those are take priority. But if we had a bag available, if we maybe thought to prepare that, we can take that with us and have just what we need for at least like 3 days until we can get help.
I mean, you don't realize things can happen so quickly. I mean, like I said, I've been through a couple tornadoes, and like my house hasn't been hit, but we've been hit within like a mile each time. Like these massive tornadoes that have like been like EF4 tornadoes. And you just think the first time it comes through, it's like, wow, that was like a once in a lifetime thing. And then, 7 years later it comes through again. It's like, well, maybe I should really get serious about this. Like this could happen a third time. And like, you just never know. Like it is crazy. And I mean, so especially like for us, because we travel a lot, like very much like you, but we travel in often a camper. Sometimes we're flying. It just depends. But we always try to be like acutely aware of our surroundings, like you were saying, like always kind of noticing like, oh, something off. But a step further would be like emergency preparedness for like wilderness survival. Is that something you've done? Is that because that's something that we want to do before we go international for overlanding, is like make sure that we know how to care for ourselves in the middle of Patagonia if something goes wrong and there's no hospital around. Have you taken some of these emergency things into the wilderness?
So I actually think a lot of them kind of go like hand in hand. Like all of my go bag, everyday life, emergency preparedness gear is stuff I use on the trail. So if you're a camper or hiker, you probably have everything you need in your house. How can we maybe centralize it and keep it all together so it's easy to grab and go? So taking a lot of this to like, and I think they go pretty well hand in hand. I always recommend taking a wilderness first aid class for anyone who spends time outside. I took one through Knowles, and it was like $200 in Chattanooga. It was 2 days. I drove from Memphis, and I went. And I want to get my so my wilderness first responder, but it expires after 2 years, and I can't get it while I'm here, so I'm going to wait till I get back. But I think even just having basic knowledge is helpful, so that if you do have some sort of an ailment, you're like, okay, I have to wait for emergency responders to get here. I either have to hike out, I have to wait for a helivac to come, or I have to wait for a SAR team to get to me. So what can I have on my person to help keep me warm, fed, safe, or whatever it may be until emergency services can get here? I think just even having a basic understanding of first aid, of if something happens, okay, what can I do to help maintain life if it's life threatening, or how can I stop the bleed, or make sure we don't get somebody gets an infection while we're waiting for somebody to get out there. So I think that's extremely valuable. There are a ton of resources online too that are free. I recommend going to an actual place and learning from an instructor if you're able to. And then also I am like kind of a snob about being overly prepared when going out into hiking, backcountry camping, overlanding, all of that. Because you are all you have when you're out there. If it's just you and somebody else, or you're solo, whatever is on your back is all you have to survive if things get weird. So the 10 essentials. You can literally watch a YouTube video or Google this. Having the 10 essentials with you is so important, because it's the things that will help keep you alive if you have to stay out there overnight, or if a thunderstorm or lightning storm rolls in, or if you get hurt and you're having to stay in one place and the temperatures are dropping and you pull out your emergency blanket, your bivy, to keep you warm. Do you have enough food to help you get through that night? Do you have a water filter in case you run out of water? Is there a water source even there? So like, again, I have like a ton of resources too on this on my Instagram if people want to read through them. But how can we go out there? And I always go out hiking, camping, whatever, backpacking, of like, I have enough on me to be out there for another day. Yeah, you're going to be living kind of like minimally, and you're not in like this, you don't have a sleeping bag with you if you're going hiking, but I have something to keep me warm if necessary. So yeah, again, a lot of those gear that we bring, on trail is what we can use in our homes too. Doing research on the trail is really important. So these kind of go hand in hand too. So if in regular day, everyday emergency situations, it's important for us to know what natural disasters can happen in the state that we live in. So if you're living in like, I don't know, Maine, you're probably not going to have typhoons there, but like what big winter storms can come. So doing your research of where you're living and what seasons can potentially bring specific natural disasters is really important, so you can prep for that season. And then also, when you're out on trail, how can we do research on the trail to know exactly where we're going? Do we have maps downloaded? Do we let someone know where we're going, when we're supposed to be back? Did you tell them what you're wearing in case you need to be identified if you're lost? What do the trail conditions look like? Is there a specific part of the trail where people always get lost because like it maybe you have to bushwhack a little bit and you don't know if you're going left or right? So wildlife, that's another one too. What's going to be out there? So like I always encourage people to do like as much research as possible before getting on trail, so that if things got weird, you would be like, cool, we're good. Let's take a quick breath. Let's breathe. Let's do an audit of like where we're at, how we're feeling. Do we need to turn around? One of the most like highest financial investments, I know they're expensive to invest in if someone does anything where there's no service or you're by yourself, is a satellite phone. Something like a Garmin InReach. I have the Garmin InReach Mini. That thing stays on
So
me
do
at
we.
all. Yep. That's why I like you guys.
I knew you were going to say that. Yep.
Yep. You're like,
always hype with it right there.
Yep. Always.
I knew that's where you were going.
Yep. It is not cheap. It's like $350. But if you don't drink your Starbucks drink every single week for X amount of weeks, you can take that $6 and put it in a fund to buy a Garmin InReach. So that I've listened to a lot of podcasts about people who have like the Out Alive podcast or whatever. And they're like, yeah, so if I had a satellite phone, I could have SOS'd, or I didn't think about buying a satellite phone or bringing one. And they're like, I wish I had it, because they could have called emergency services because they were on a trail. They were on a trip, a 5-day trip. Something happened on day 2. no one's going to check in with them for 3 more days because they're supposed to be out in the wilderness of Alaska or the Yukon or whatever. So having a satellite phone allows you to communicate with people back home. You can say, hey, at camp, all good. You can drop waypoints. You can download maps. You can hit SOS if like you're in a situation where you need a medical intervention. You can hit the SOS button. So, and that's great like for everyday life too. If like cell towers go down and you're trying to like communicate with somebody, you have your sat phone. So high dollar
That's awesome.
piece of gear, but it could honestly be the thing that saved your life.
That's absolutely. I mean, I carry it with me. I have this little tech pouch that I always keep in my backpack. And I always, this may be like crazy, but I always carry my headlamp and my Garmin InReach. Because like partially the headlamp just for like packing up if we're traveling. But the Garmin InReach, like even like road trips internationally, I'm like, I don't know where we're going. Like, I don't know if my phone's going to work.
That's
like
nice.
Worst case scenario, like I can struggle on being like, letting the fear and the anxiety take control over me more than like, let's do this. So like, how do you balance? I'm sorry, I'm asking all the questions.
No,
yeah,
well, I do have a question. I do have a question. But before you get to that, because I know where you're going, but I want to go back to the go bag really quick. The go bag.
Oh yeah, I love that.
So you put all of your like papers, your important papers in this pack, and then all the supplies and everything, and then where do you put that in the house? And then are you worried about it being stolen and, you know, somebody like has just a bag of somewhat cash and all your important documents? Like, how do you go about like taking care of that?
That's a great question. So I have no fear of it being stolen here in Japan because the crime rate is so stupid low. It's obviously still there. And even living in Japan, I keep my normal like guard up because when I get back to the States, like it's important for me to kind of keep it where it's at. So great question. Right. Yes, I have all of I actually have like an extra, I have a lot of bags because I do this for a living. So it's a 70-liter backpacking pack and it has all of the gear in it. It has water, food, 3 days worth of food for Chance, food for me. I just made it for myself because my husband's gone. So he don't need nothing in there right now. And so this actually lives downstairs in a closet and it's kind of like pushed back. You can't really see it. Like it just looks like a bag with around like toilet paper and everything. Someone goes in the closet, no one's going to really like,
they're not going to think.
Look for it.
Like, so you don't have a sign that says go pack, you know, or anything like that.
Go bag this way.
All my documents.
There's $300 in here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you want it to be in a place that is pretty like relatively accessible. I keep it downstairs because I always usually have to go downstairs to go outside. Like I don't keep it upstairs because if something happened upstairs, like a fire or something, I'm like, cool, I have to go downstairs to grab it.
Right.
So that answered the first question about like where it's located. Probably don't put it by the front door. Because if people come in, they're like, oh, this sweet bag. And it can be in any type of bag. I will take this. Thank you. You can put it in a duffel bag. I like backpacks because if we need to leave on foot, I don't want to carry a duffel bag with me. And if you have kids too, I didn't mention this, make them their own little backpacks. So you're not carrying everyone's stuff. All the kids have their own little thing with all of the things that they need. And maybe like their favorite toy or a coloring book to keep them kind of occupied. So just have those in a place you know where they're at, but aren't like blatantly like in the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you're giving tips for families too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that we often forget to do just because we don't have kids. We don't think like that. But this is good because you do have a lot of families listening.
No offense. We don't have kids. We're not a kid family. I'm like, I can tell you about what to do with your dog because we're
I was going to ask you about the dog.
Chance is good. That dude is set. If we need to go, he's fit. We can go miles if we need to. So I try and remember a lot of my audience does have small children. So I try and remember to like throw things in there with like kids. So I'm glad you noticed that because I've been actively trying to remember to talk about kiddos. No offense to kids.
We talk about the dog.
I'm like, he's got his own go bag. He's ready.
Yeah. This is off the topic. We'll probably cut this out, but I'm really impressed that you got Chance to Japan, which is like something I'll probably talk to you about eventually because we travel with our dog. And I know that it is a lot of work, a lot of money, and it's not fun. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, and you can totally leave that in there because people have to come overseas with dogs and paperwork, ask a lot of questions, have a savings account for that process, and have more paperwork in a spreadsheet because that's what I did. And I was like, come hell or high water, I'm getting my dog over here with the least amount of anxiety as possible. So
you did it.
It's a real thing.
Yeah. Japan is, if people don't know, Japan's probably the hardest besides maybe Australia. Like, it's really hard.
Yes, it's a rabies-free country. So he has to have a very strict schedule of rabies shots with blood work that can only be sent to 2 labs in the United States. That has to get mailed out. You get it back. You have to let Japan know you're coming 40 days ahead of time. And then there's more paperwork. Everything has to be in black ink. It can't be blue ink. It has to be black ink.
I remember the scene. Yeah.
That's a real thing. And it was the crate has to be a specific size. You can't use plastic pieces on the crates. It has to be replaced with metal. You can only fly in specific months because of the heat. It's it was kind of we joke about, speaking of kids, it's harder to get a dog to Japan than to get children to Japan.
Oh,
which is
100%.
Nuts. Yeah. I was like, and it was more expensive to get him over here. I'm like, dude, you need a job.
Right?
Yeah.
He's a freeloader.
Yeah, he's a freeloader. Yeah.
He's gotta get his own brand deals. Make him pull some weight around there.
I'm about to make him an Instagram so he can get paid for it.
Chance in Japan. Yeah.
Everybody loves him.
Everybody does. Love it. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know it's a Saturday morning there, but I do want to kind of ask one. We'll go with 2 more questions. One, the one I was going to ask is, I tend to be a fearful or anxious person. Like, that's just my, I love going out there and doing it. Like, I'm like, let's go have that adventure. But also there's always that, okay, I need to have plan A, B, and C in case A and B fall through. I still have C kind of thing. How do you adventure without letting those fears run you? Or how do you find that balance between being prepared without letting it keep you off the trail or keep you from doing what you love?
It's a great question because there is this harmony that you want to find between the two. I don't like the word balance. I like the word harmony because I don't think it's ever going to be in perfect balance. So it's finding the flux between the two. I think fear is important because it keeps us vigilant. It keeps us prepared. It keeps us on our toes. It's a very natural thing for us to have. It allows us to trust our instincts and our gut if something's wrong. Like, oh, there's fear here. That's not made up. Sure, we may have these formulated things in our brains, but fear keeps us alert and keeps us ready. So we never want to live this fear-led life. We want fear to be a part of it because we have to understand things can happen. The likelihood is pretty low until something does happen. Or you meet someone and you're like, yeah, this happened to me. You're like, oh, wow, you're a regular everyday person on the same trail as I am, and this happened to you. So fear can be really, a lot of people do tell me, they're like, I'm afraid to go out solo. And that's okay. You're allowed to be afraid to do that. It's not something that I was really good at right away. It took reps. It took time. It took me believing in myself and my capabilities and learning, making sure I have the proper gear. And it's important to start small. So great, you want to go solo hiking for the first time. Okay, so the first time you do it, actually do it with a friend. So you know the trail, you know the route, you know where you're going. And then the next time, go by yourself. So you now have that confidence and you built that next little brick of, cool, I know where the trail is, I'm going to go by myself. And then, okay, I want to go a little bit further. So I do an overnight backpacking trip. Great. We need to make sure we let everybody know where we're going, where we're camping, communications there, have all of our gear, all of our food. And you're probably going to be scared the first night you sleep out in a tent by yourself. I was. Yeah. It was nerve-wracking. And I was an idiot. And I did a 14-mile day just because I thought I did.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. Again, I told you guys, I was wearing cotton, my first hiking, I was wearing cotton Victoria's Secret pants, military Rocky boots. It was a show. So
where did you go? Can I ask? You weren't in grizzly country or something, were you?
No. For I did 3 Ridges in George Washington National Park. Yep. So you probably
cool.
cool. You get some of the Appalachian Trail runs through it. So
Yeah.
this is a great idea.
my
not,
gosh.
I mean, I did
That's
but yeah, I had everything. But again, like,
that's a lot.
I had like 40 pounds of gear for one night. And again,
Oh
you
my
like have to
gosh.
learn. But I did it, and I was like, okay, what did I learn from that? What would I do differently? Now I have the confidence that I can get to a trailhead. I slept in my car that night. I can set my own tent up. I can hike this trail. I can do all these things. So like, it's these small bricks that you stack of like mini micro adventures help you build confidence to those bigger adventures and to doing more things solo and like just bigger outdoor pursuits that require more gear or more planning. And you have to do these small ones first to be able to do the big ones, and like believing in yourself to do those. And fear, again, I don't think fear should be completely null and void, because it keeps us on our toes. It keeps us understanding that things could happen, but I have everything to prevent that from happening. And a lot of what does happen sometimes happens because we weren't doing those preventative measures. We didn't take a quick second to check the weather before we went out and did the thing. There are obviously some things that happen that are totally out of our control, but do we have the experience after we've been doing this for a while to help us get through whatever had happened? So fear is allowed to be there. Again, we don't necessarily want it to be everything, but we can't just like wipe fear off the table. We lessen our fear, and it becomes more like, hey, I'm prepared by doing the thing that kind of scares us a little bit.
That's so good. That's good. That's like, I feel like that's a really good place to close here. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we I don't want to cut you off. I could talk forever about like Japan and like
yeah.
No. Okay, it's great, Sia. No, I do. That was so good. I'm like, okay, like it's kind of funny. Like the last couple episodes of our podcast have all had a common like takeaway, which is like find that point of entry. Have you noticed that in the last 3 episodes, are like in very different places of travel and adventure, but everybody's like, you got to find that entry point of like what's comfortable for you, and then build those little steps from there.
Yeah.
So I love that we're ending on that. But I do want to ask you, we're going to link everything down below, but could you tell us your resources that are available, the trips you're leading next year, all that kind of thing? Because I feel like people are going to hear this and be like, I want to go.
Yeah.
I want to travel with her.
Yeah. People are going to listen and be like, yeah, I want to travel with you.
Well, I hate all things social media. I'm just kidding. I don't hate all things social media. I'm on one platform, and it's Instagram, because I can't handle anything. I can't handle anything else.
Good for you.
So I know, which is not, but Instagram is my primary. I'm on my stories a lot. I have a ton of resources saved in my guides. You'll see a ton of content on there. That's how you can reach me for like questions. I have my website, which I'll link to. Trip-wise, so I'm going to Patagonia in about 2 months. So that's exciting.
Oh my gosh.
Cool.
There are some spots left, but it closes in like 10 days. So it's kind of like a quick turnaround if you did want to come.
Okay.
Next year, I'll be doing Yellowstone in July. And then I'll be having another trip I'm planning. So next year is kind of up in the air for us with like life things. So I can't plan a lot because we don't know where we're going to be. Let's just say that. So I just have one trip next year. And then I have my online outdoor community called the Trailblazers community. So it's an all-women online community of resources. We do giveaways, educational content. I do webinars. I just gave one on like water filtration. I've given it on solo safety in the outdoor realm. So those are kind of like where to find me.
Perfect. And like I said, we'll link everything down below, and we'll definitely, this podcast will be coming out on Monday. So this is actually a quick turnaround. We usually record far in advance. So if you're listening to this the week that it comes out, the Patagonia trip is open.
There's still room. There's still room. You still have 7 days, 8 days. Yeah. So
come hang out.
Bethany.
Yes. I'm so jealous of that one.
Yeah. Bethany, thank you so much for like joining us and like giving all these like words of wisdom. Like, I mean, I know that we could go on forever, but thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. And yeah, come follow me on Instagram and enjoy the ride in Japan.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Right.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right, see you.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks for listening to What No One Tells You with Chris and Sarah. If you have a comment or question that you want answered on the air, be sure to send us a message to hello@chrisandsarah.com, or you can call or text our phone number at 423-825-9572. Thanks for listening.